a little bit with, with some of the testing that we have to do now. We had basically all day to meet with the players today, and we had quite a bit of meeting time. So what we'll do is we'll have a little less meeting time and a little bit more walkthrough and practice times the next couple of days.
All right, Mike Zimmer talking about just what a weird week this is for the Vikings. They have not had any positive COVID tests, even though the Tennessee Titans, last week's opponent, had their game postponed as of this morning. Purple Daily, Phil Mackey, Judd Zulgad, Declan Goff producing. And our guest to start off this episode, Sarah Barshop, ESPN.com's Houston Texans reporter. And Sarah, I think just to give you a sort of a vibe of what's happening here, the sports landscape in the Twin Cities, it's a double dose of Minnesota versus Houston. And round one went emphatically to the Astros. And so Minnesota sports fans are just kind of wondering, like, are the Texans going to deliver the knockout blow, or what's going to happen here when two 0-3 teams meet this weekend?
I was going to say, is there really a knockout blow when both teams are 0-3?
Yeah, it's a pillow fight.
Yeah, it's not at all. It's sort of sad.
It's a valid point. Yeah. So what is, like, how bad is it on the 0-3 front for the Texans right now? Because I look at their schedule and I think from a distance I can at least say, all right, well, they played maybe the toughest 3-game stretch of any team in the NFL, and so there's a little bit of a built-in excuse. So how 0-3 are they in your mind?
So when the schedule came out and I picked the games, we did that before the season, I had them going 1-3 through the first 4 games, although I think I had them beating Pittsburgh and losing to Minnesota. So I don't know that I'm surprised. I think the way they lost, like, they really, in some of these games, the scores have been closer than the game seems. But I can tell you, we don't go in the locker room anymore, but I can tell you from just the Zoom calls with these guys, I mean, this doesn't even remind me of 2018 when they lost 3 in a row to start 0-3. I remember them, it was pretty positive. It was like, well, we've got this. And Deshaun Watson's been decently positive about it, but even he, it seemed yesterday on the Zoom calls, was like annoyed, as you probably should be if you're 0-3. JJ Watt seemed more upset than I really remember seeing him after the game and yesterday. So I don't know. I think they do recognize, like I saw the stat, I think it is the toughest 3-game stretch to open the season in the NFL. It's their 3 toughest games of the season, I think, if you look at the FPI percentages. So, I think they acknowledge that this is the hardest part. And now we've done this before 3 years ago. We can go on this streak. But I do think the teams are a little different. And I don't know. I'm very curious to see how they come out on Sunday against the Vikings.
Do you get the impression that privately, because obviously they're not going to come out and say this, Sarah, but do you get the feeling that they look at this game in particular and they see a struggling, scuffling, I will say this, not very good, really, Vikings team, and think this is the one where we turn the corner? Because to your point, those first 3 games and opponents were tough. This provides them at home an opportunity to get well in a lot of ways pretty quick, I think.
And in front of fans. They didn't have fans in their home opener. They're going to allow up to, I think, 13,000 fans for this game. So I think they see it as the point they have to turn the corner, right? Like, if you're they've done 0-3 and made the playoffs, although I would argue that this division was a lot harder this year. And they had more talent in 2018. But I think that you don't come back from 0-4 and make the playoffs. I would think that historically that probably hasn't happened. And if it has, it's very, very rare. So I think they know that. I'm sure both teams know they have to win. I think you look at the defenses. I actually was looking at their next 6 games are all against teams who are in the bottom half of passing yards allowed. So I think maybe Deshaun Watson looks at that and thinks, okay, like, I've got to turn it around. I don't think the Watson we've seen through these first 3 games is the Deshaun Watson we're used to seeing, and that we will see this further on this season. I think he's a good quarterback. I think that he deserved that contract, and I think he'll show us why soon. Maybe he won't play at the MVP level he was playing in the middle of last season, but I do think we'll see some improvement from him even without DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, where do you think, I mean, we talk about quarterback contracts here all the time because Kirk Cousins makes $33 million and doesn't play like it on a regular basis. So money aside, where do you think, and just sort of the vibe, you talking to people in the NFL and with the Texans, if you're sort of going through quarterback tiers, where do you think Deshaun Watson is right now? I mean, I think it's probably Pat Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson are probably somewhere around the top tier. I mean, where do you think Deshaun Watson is or should be?
I think going into the season, I probably would have told you that he was entering that tier, right? Like he had the chance, the strong start to the season. He played at kind of that for part of last season. He was starting to play himself into that conversation. Obviously, the contract puts him firmly in that conversation in terms of contract wise. So I think he was getting there. Now through the first 3 games, we haven't seen that. Maybe he sets the world on fire the rest of the way, and it was like, okay, well, this was just a tough stretch of the season. I probably put him right below those guys. Although I do think he needs to take a step forward. Like we've looked at him, he tore his ACL his rookie year, but he's had these pieces. I don't know, maybe it's not him, maybe it's the Texans offense. They traded away his best receiver. So, but I do think that a great quarterback makes everyone around him better, and we see that. So I'll be curious to see what this next stretch looks like. Like, does he play not just better, but does he play a lot better to the level of maybe what not Patrick Mahomes has done, but maybe just below that?
Why is Hopkins gone? Well, because he clearly was such a key guy there. Was that a case where things couldn't be repaired relationship-wise between the franchise and him, or was that a premature move by the team that's just going to come back and bite them at least consistently through this season, do you think?
Well, definitely will come back. I think it's already come back and bit them. I think a lot of things. Bill O'Brien said that you can't pay a left tackle, a quarterback, a top wide receiver, and defensive end. Now, I would argue that other teams have found a way to do that. Look at the Chiefs. They've paid a lot of people, and they somehow have made this work. So I don't think it was preemptive. I think the relationship was damaged. I saw Hopkins said, we haven't talked to him since the end of last year. But I saw in that, I think the Sports Illustrated story, he said, like, I knew if I asked for a trade, or I knew if I asked for more money, they would trade me because they didn't want to pay me more. So I think that relationship between Bill O'Brien and DeAndre Hopkins wasn't going to, was kind of beyond repair, but I think it could have worked on the football field. They don't have to be best friends for this to work and for Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins to have a great year. So I think the Texans just saw that they could go in a different way. That we've talked about, like everyone's talked about this, right? Like the value for the trade wasn't there. The trade keeps looking worse and worse. So yeah, it will definitely bite them. I was actually just talking to my editor the other day, and I was like, at what point do I stop like harping on the fact that they traded him? Like every time I write something, I'm like, oh, the offense is bad, and also they had a really good wide receiver last year. So I think that's something that Texans fans will always look at, regardless of how the season had started for Hopkins. But the fact that it started the way it did, the fact that David Johnson's season has started the way it did, and even like the icing on the cake is they kind of said, well, Ross Blacklock was that 2nd round pick they got in the trade. They're like, oh, we got the 2nd round pick. He was inactive last week because he was ejected from week 2 for punching someone. So,
right. That's always good. It's always good. If you look, by the way, Sarah Barshop, ESPN.com Texans reporter, is our guest to start off the show here. If you look at coaches in the NFL who've at least been with their current team longer than 3 years, so I'm going to take Matt Nagy off the board, and I'm going to take Mike Vrabel off the board. Mike Zimmer, Dan Quinn, and Bill O'Brien have the 3 best winning percentages of coaches that haven't won a Super Bowl, if I'm looking at this right. And Mike Zimmer's 0-3. He just signed a new contract, so he's not in immediate danger. But Bill O'Brien is 0-3. How hot is his seat? What is the vibe when it comes to Bill O'Brien and what he needs to do here to remain the coach of the Houston Texans?
So a lot of me, again, before the season thought, there's no way, right? Like, especially in a pandemic, you don't want to pay another coach. You don't want to pay another general manager. They're still paying Brian Gaine. If money is tight right now, you're probably not trying to just get rid of him. I have a hard time seeing him being gone just because Cal McNair has committed to him, right? Like when someone's your general manager and your head coach, in some ways it makes it easier to just start again if you get rid of him. But I also think that by giving him the contract extension after the 4-12 season, by naming him general manager last offseason after he traded Clowney and all that stuff, I just think that he has shown such a commitment to him that it looks even worse for him, for the McNair family, if they're like, oh, well, you didn't handle this right. So I think I don't know if it's a hot seat, but if we're talking about a 2-win season, a 4-win season, that most coaches are not safe for that, especially if there are no injuries. Like Deshaun Watson's healthy and that happens. But I think Deshaun Watson is good enough that that's not going to happen. I think they will win. I don't know about they'll make the playoffs, but that's what he does, right? That's what Bill O'Brien does. Makes the playoffs. There's an extra playoff spot this year. And in the first round mostly, or they probably should before Deshaun Watson wills them back against Buffalo last year. So
that extra playoff spot, like we're gonna
the Bill O'Brien playoff spot.
It is. They should name it after him. But also, it's when Pete Carroll took the Seahawks. Remember, they were 7-9. They won their division. We're gonna see like a 6-10 team at some point with this extra playoff spot. I guarantee it in the next 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Texans for I think his first 3 years went 7-9, and they've actually had double-digit wins. I think the last 2 years. When I think about the fact they've won the division 4 out of the last 5 years, it's like, and I've watched for 4 of those years. I have watched or 5, I guess. I've watched every single one of those games, and it's just like, oh, that's right. Yep, no, they do win, but not much in the playoffs.
So, how much concern in your mind does there have to be about what you just talked about, which is O'Brien is coach GM, which unless you're Belichick, I absolutely hate. But that they are going to almost be forced in their mind because he's making all the decisions, including personnel-wise, Sarah, to double down and keep him. Because to me, that's what could really set a franchise back when you don't have that GM to stand between the guy who owns the team and the coach. And now that coach is making decisions personnel-wise that sometimes can really hamper a franchise long-term. How much do you think this could come back to bite them, giving Bill O'Brien as much power as they have?
Yeah, I mean, especially because they have their quarterback. Like, this is not a team or a franchise even of 10 years ago when you're like, well, we don't have a quarterback. We don't really have anything to build upon. Now you've already spent Deshaun Watson's rookie contract and you don't have anything to show for it in terms of playoff success. So at what point, there's 2 years before his contract really starts taking a high percentage of the salary cap. And I'm just curious how much that plays into Cal McNair's thought process. Do we give Bill 2 more years, or is it more important to get someone in now who can try and take Deshaun to the next level in that? But yeah, I think that's when you put all your eggs in one basket, you are starting again, if you decide to fire that guy. So Bill O'Brien always talks about how they have a very collaborative process. There's a lot of people in the front office and they all work together, but my guess is that he's the one making the final decision. So yeah, I think you're definitely playing with fire, especially with Deshaun Watson's future. Hey,
Sarah, last thing for you here. I know you've been immersed in Texans land, and so you haven't been following the Vikings super closely, but you did before the season. You said you did have you had the Texans starting 1-3, and one of those losses was originally going to be to Minnesota. What is your sort of 30,000-foot viewpoint of the Vikings from where you sit, and Kirk Cousins, and just what's your big picture opinion of them going into this game?
I think when I think about the division, the Packers are so good this year that, and I don't know if the Bears are good, but they are 3-0, and so I think I've always thought of if Kirk Cousins can figure it out, they've got a good team. They've got a great running back. If you can figure that out, you can probably, make some moves in the division, just because if the Packers are the only other good team with the extra playoff spot too, I just think they had a chance. But I mean, they also had a tough start to the season though, right? Their opponents are also 8-1.
Yeah, it's tough because the Titans are 3-0. But then you watch them actually play for 3 hours, and it's impressive. All right, they made a ton of mistakes, and they're trying to give games away. I don't know. The Vikings. I mean, here's the thing: if they don't beat the Texans, they've got a road game at Seattle in Week 5, so that's you're 0-5 at that point, and you've got a game after the bye against the Packers. So we're literally sitting here, and I don't know if it's certainly not the Vikings, because you already have your franchise quarterback there, Texans fans. But Vikings fans are just sort of clamoring for, listen, if it's going to be that bad, let's just do it 1 year, go draft Justin Fields or something, and move on with our lives. And so Vikings fans are very split right now, kind of rooting for them to win a little bit against the Texans, but also kind of rooting for just a train wreck one time and go get your Deshaun Watson,
Yeah, well, see, the Texans can't do that because they don't have their first round pick this year. The Miami Dolphins might have a very good pick if this goes south for the Texans. So at least the Vikings have a pick to look forward to.
Yep. Great stuff. Sarah, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. It was great.
All right. That's Sarah Barshop from ESPN.com. She reports on the Houston Texans. And actually, let's dive before we get to our pigskin pecking order. Let's just dive into that, what we just talked about, which is this sort of fork in the road this week, that with that 7th playoff spot, you could talk yourself into as an 0-3 team, especially an 0-3 team that just showed a star wide receiver last week and put up 400 yards offensively. That, man, like, yeah, you're not going to go 12-4 anymore, but could you sneak into that 7th playoff spot? And could you beat the Texans, even if you lose to Seattle? Could you beat the Texans? Could you beat the Falcons? And now you're kind of back on your way toward a 500 record. I think that's one path. The other path is you lose to the Texans, which is very possible because the Texans are loaded at quarterback.
And they played 3 really tough games.
Yep. So it is a road game, even though there's not going to really be enough fans to make an impact. And then you play that road game against Seattle, and now you're 0-5, and now you're officially tanking for Trevor, failing for Fields. What do you make of this split path heading into Sunday?
I make of it that if I'm the Vikings privately, I prefer to lose. They won't, but I would. I don't see a way that this is going to be. Look, I mean, they are literally, I think it's very safe to say now, going to get to 6 or 7 wins. And I would ask this from a long-term perspective. What's the point? What is the point? I don't think that you're good enough to ultimately chase that playoff spot. And the amazing thing here is I'm not talking about the Vikings offense. I'm talking about one thing, their defense. It stinks. It's not going to mature. Guys can get experience, but overall, you are never going to be good enough with the personnel that you're going to put on the field weekly in 2020 to turn some type of magical corner. And oh my God, we've got the 6th or 7th playoff spot. So if I'm internally looking at this, I stay on my plan. I continue to play my young players. I continue to get them experience. My offense might pop up and win me a game or 2 or 4. I don't know. But when I look at even with their struggles against good teams, Deshaun Watson and the Houston offense, all right, against the Vikings defense, I don't look at that and say, hey, that's a fun matchup. I look at that and say, nightmare for the Vikings. So I think the course that the Vikings are on and doing what they're doing with their players right now and playing their young players and doing what they have to do is the best plan. But I don't see a magical week 8, it changes in 2020. I just don't.
Yeah, this is...
And I'm comfortable with that, too. I'm not mad, just comfortable.
This is a very winnable game. So let's start there. This is a game that the Vikings can win. And it's a game that I think the Vikings maybe should win. I think if you start to go, we did these offseason tail of the tapes just for the season, right? And if we went tail of the tape, which head coach do you take, Bill O'Brien or Mike Zimmer? I'm taking Mike Zimmer.
Okay.
I think they're both probably in a similar tier. Like they're not in that Bill Belichick, Andy Reid tier. They're probably in like the 2nd or 3rd tier. But I think Mike Zimmer is borderline top 10 head coach in the NFL. And I think Bill O'Brien is probably more like borderline bottom 10 head coach in the NFL. So they're not. I
don't know he's as bad a coach as you think. I think he is an awful personnel guy.
That's a fair point.
And I think that's the Texans' mistake. They gave a buffoon too much power.
That's a fair point. Quarterback. All right, I'm taking Deshaun Watson over Kirk Cousins 7 days a week and twice on Sunday. But then you start to get into some of the other things. Offensive weapons. Well, the Vikings have 2-star receivers now as of last week. Justin Jefferson has arrived. Mm-hmm. The Vikings have Dalvin Cook. The Houston Texans, all right, they brought Brandon Cooks in, and he's not a disaster at receiver. But Randall Cobb is past his prime, and Will Fuller is fine as a deep threat. But I'll take the Vikings wide receivers. I think they're more top-heavy, and I'll take the Vikings at running back. If you want to go total defense, the Vikings defense is kind of a train wreck. So is Houston's. Houston has allowed 30-plus points per game this season. Tougher schedule, but neither one of these teams is the 1985 Chicago Bears. Both of them have at least one competent to elite pass rusher. If Danielle Hunter comes back at some point, the Vikings have the advantage there. So this is a very winnable game. But if you win it, you better go. Like if you're going to win this game, you better beat Atlanta in 2 weeks. You better beat Green Bay, and you better go and get a playoff spot. Because if you win this game and you finish 5-11, you are wasting your time.
But they can't. But here's the thing about Sunday's game where I don't even think a moron like Bill O'Brien can screw it up, okay? One position. It's one player, Deshaun Watson. You tell me this. How is this Vikings defense as currently constructed going to stop him? Because if he starts to throw and they focus on that, guess what he's going to do? Use his feet. They don't have the ability long-term in any game to stop the run. They don't. The middle of that defensive line has us playing. I mean, it's that bad. And so
Actually,
look,
in the post-COVID, it's weight-wise, it's actually
oh,
pretty
we're
close.
better because I can anchor that puppy. But if you look at can they stop a team run-wise in a game for a quarter? Probably yes. 4 quarters, Deshaun Watson. Literally, here's the problem. Pick your poison. Because whichever poison you pick, I'm going to poison you with my other poison, which means if you're going to stop him from running and being creative, he's going to start throwing. You're in trouble, okay? Now you're going to drop more guys into coverage, and you're going to stop him from throwing. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to have him run. You can't stop him. Bill O'Brien would need to be among the worst coaches in the history of the National Football League, which I don't believe he is when it comes to coaches, not to devise a Watson game plan here that's going to pick the Vikings absolutely apart in some way, and that's where I can beat you, I think.
Yeah, it's tough to sit there and watch Ryan Tannehill make some mistakes, but also sort of carve your defense apart and watch what's happened in these first 3 weeks, and then come up with some sort of conclusion that the Vikings defense is going to be fine against Deshaun Watson.
Right.
It's a lot of
Russell Wilson then is going to
gymnastics.
put the fork in your bleeping you know what.
Yeah. It's a lot of mental gymnastics for sure. The Vikings injury report real quick here. So Chris Boyd did not practice. Mike Hughes with the neck did not practice, and Cam Dantzler was limited in practice, even though these are all just like what they would have done if they had actually practiced.
If there wasn't COVID concerns, yes. Sir.
Yeah. So those are the only 3 that showed up, right? Just the 3 cornerbacks. I don't think. Well, Barr's out for the year.
Yeah.
And Daniil Hunter is not showing up in the injury report because he's still on injured reserve, and so they don't.
Yeah, but here's the weird thing: is he can come off it now. So the question becomes when. To be clear, I'm not asking for it. Okay.
Yeah.
Leave him on the IR as long as you want. I think it's a good idea.
But don't you think so? So he was supposed to spend 3 weeks on IR and then reevaluate.
Correct.
If you were still all in on winning games and going to the playoffs this season, and he was ready to come off IR, then he would come off IR. They wouldn't necessarily announce it until closer to Sunday if they didn't want to, but especially because they didn't practice yesterday. But if you were to be back at practice today, they would have to take him off IR, right?
And put him on the report if he didn't practice in full too.
So,
but by the way, I'm fine now. I am as comfortable as you can be comfortable with being a bad team. This is fine with me. It doesn't to me, the last thing I want to see is this team pop up and win losable games. Last Sunday, I'm telling you, as far as the blueprint goes for 2020, last Sunday to me, ideal. I enjoyed the game. That's all I want. And you lost by a point. And you know what? It gave us talking points. It was a dissectable game, which I mean the Packer game, right? Barely dissectable because it's just stunk. The Colts game was a train wreck. Last Sunday's game to me, if you were to program the perfect Vikings game for a season in which this team might be bad, they played it. And the last thing, guys got valuable experience, which is what I want.
Or invaluable. Or not valuable.
Depends how you look
Whatever.
at it.
Like
No. The young defensive backs like Chris Boyd who played, I think got valuable because my assumption is you do have a large group of these guys, or a group, I should say, not large, a group of these guys who are going to grow from this. And a 1-point loss this year turns into a 2-point win in 2 years.
So instead, you're saying in the pregame where they go like 1, 2, 3, something, you're going to say 1, 2, 3. Lose. Let's grow with a loss today.
No.
Let's gain some experience.
It's got to be one word.
Gain valuable experience.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Interesting.
Be entertaining.
I want it
but
interesting.
Lose late in the fourth quarter.
I want it interesting.
Fail for Fields.
Was it not interesting?
It was interesting.
Thank you.
It was interesting.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna get to our pigskin pecking order here. Excuse me, in just a second. But today is the last day. If you are interested in winning our Purple Daily Corona Hard Seltzer Ultimate Home Tailgate Party, a 65-inch TCL TV with a soundbar, $200 worth of Grunhofer's meats, and $100 of MGM wine and spirits. That's a lot of meat. That's a lot of TV and football, and that's a lot of MGM wine and spirits right there. It's all free to enter. If you want to win that package, you can enter one of 2 ways. Go to scorenorth.com and click on rewards at the top menu bar, and then you'll just see the giveaway. Or you can just download or open the Score North app. It's free in the Apple and Google Play stores, and you can register your name and email and enter through the listener rewards link in the top right corner. Let's rank some football teams here, guys. We call this our weekly pigskin pecking order. We're a day late because we got really deep into the Kirk Cousins weeds yesterday. But 1 through 10, we'll start with 10 and go up. What is your pigskin pecking order this week, Judd Zulgad?
All right.
Appropriate music.
I need the music. Thank you very much, Maestro.
You and Randy. You have to
Randy
call
needs the
for,
music.
You have to call for the music.
I need the music.
I will hit you on the ones and
All right,
twos.
we got some
That's what
shit.
I do.
I don't get that phrase,
Football.
but that's okay.
That's okay.
I'm old.
I think the
need.
fact that you don't get it gives me life.
I know
So,
it does, and I
it's
actually
fine.
enjoy the fact that you're trolling me because
Yes.
it makes me laugh.
Yeah.
Okay, so there have been some changes. At least one drastic one, which I was sadly forced to make in the pigskin pecking order this week. Number 10 on my list, the Los Angeles Rams at 2-1. They got beat in Buffalo. They almost came back. I think they're a fun team, and I do think Jared Goff is probably achieving who he is now. 2 years ago was probably too much, right? The Super Bowl year. And last year was probably not enough. And I think he's now becoming, in Sean McVay's offense, who he probably truly is. So I'm putting the Rams at 2-1-10. Dropping from second, it was fun while it lasted, and I really thought since they were playing the Lions, it might last for at least another week because I wasn't going to move them from second until they did lose. The Arizona Cardinals, who I still like, and I do think that division is just fantastic.
There's not a bad team in that division.
That division is so much fun.
Yeah.
It really is.
Those are all like in any other division, those are probably all at least 9-win teams.
And all of those teams are in my rankings here.
Wow.
Number 8 is the San Francisco 49ers, 2-1. They stay 8th. Number 7, Dex called us in week 1, and I sort of like, let's wait and see. And then I think I surprisingly, as I went back and looked, didn't rank them in week 2, but I have to now because they are a legit 3-0 now, the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers, my God. Okay. I guess the he's cooked chatter is done. Oh, and quickly, the Titans and Bears did not make it in my rankings. The Titans underwhelm me, and the Bears, I'm sorry. When you're forced to lift your starting QB during the course of the game in which you achieve 3-0, you don't make my my rankings. So the Green Bay Packers, though, do at 7. Number 6, staying put, but with room to move up very soon. But they blew a big lead before they came back and won again. The Buffalo Bills. Stephon Diggs and the Buffalo Bills. 3-0, they stay 6.
Are they one of the most? If there was like an NBA League Pass, you know how NBA League Pass,
the teams you watch.
There's always like the League Pass rankings of who you're gonna watch, who's the fun team to watch. I think the Bills might be in the top 3 of just like fun teams to watch right now.
Bills, Seahawks for sure, right? You've got to watch Russ.
Chiefs, but they're always just on national TV.
Yeah, the
every
Chiefs
week.
don't count now. Exactly
Their
right.
cheat code.
So, okay, the Buffalo Bills, number 6. Number 5, also staying put and still perfect, Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh Steelers. I feel like Pittsburgh and Buffalo next week could both move up dramatically. But for now, I'm going to leave them because I'm going to leave my number 4 team as well. They lost to the Seahawks, but it was a very close game, Sunday night game. Now, a week ago, fantastic, and they are 2-1. It's the Patriots. God bless them. I mean, Belichick sends his entire team basically home claiming COVID. He gets a quarterback who, to be clear, nobody else at the time basically would touch. And he could be 3-0. He's 2-1. The Patriots, number 4.
We're going to find out this week. They play the Chiefs. We'll find out just how legit the Patriots
We
are.
will indeed. And now my top 3, they're sort of boring. And I would guess that in some way, shape, or form, it's a combination of the top 3 for each one of us. But I go Baltimore 3, staying put. Seattle 3-0 goes from 7th for me to 2nd. I mean, Russell Wilson, my God, it's just, I don't know what more to say. It's incredible. I mean, the Vikings, do they have to go there? I mean, can they just basically say,
what if they,
you know what, you get the win?
Actually, would it be better for the Vikings if they said, listen, we just need to rest up some guys because we're too hurt. We'd rather just like give you the win so that we don't get more injured players.
I got it for you. This is the week you claim COVID.
But then but then you have to reschedule the game later. Possibly.
No. You just say it's done. Here's my problem. Here's my problem with that game. So my entire Vikings theory is based on valued experience, right? Like we played against the Titans and we got, I don't think it's valuable to have Russell Wilson absolutely decimate you. Like you're taking classes, right? And so, you go to a class and maybe you bump up a math class, okay? But my problem with the Seahawks is I feel like the Vikings defenders are in third grade and you're sending them to an honors course in college against Russ. It's not a good idea.
No.
And then number one, the Chiefs.
Yeah.
So I go Chiefs, Seahawks, Ravens, Patriots, Steelers are my top 5. Bills, Packers, Niners, Cardinals, and Rams are my bottom 5.
Wow, major omission in your list that I'll throw out here. I'll speed through mine real quick here, and we'll get to Declan's.
Nice.
So my honorable mention is the Colts. All right, the Colts aren't as bad as the teams the Vikings have played are flawed. The last 2 teams,
yeah.
But the Colts defensively have allowed only 45 points in 3 games, so that's a good defense. They've gotten out to a good start, so they're my honorable mention. I've got the 49ers at 10. A ton of injuries, a backup quarterback, and they still just absolutely wiped the floor last week. So 49ers 10th. Rams are 9th for all the reasons Judd said. They're just a really good, well-run team, and Jared Goff might not be a star, but he's been reliable in a system that works, and the Rams have been very formidable so far this year. I almost feel like the Bills are too low at 8, but I've got them 8 for now just because they seem very volatile. Like they blew a massive lead, needed some luck and help from the officials, but that offense is explosive. Josh Allen sometimes he's a ticking turnover time bomb, but he's now sort of maxing out 300-plus yards and finding Stephon
Diggs. He's an
Diggs.
MVP candidate right now.
MVP.
He is. I still think that there's going to be a major fall from grace in a couple games.
I do too,
that
but
isn't there for Russell Wilson and Pat Mahomes. But yeah, Josh Allen is playing well so far. The Pittsburgh Steelers, number 7, just a team that everyone kind of forgot about because they were so nondescript last year. But the Steelers are just never a train wreck. They're even in their train wreck years, they finished 7-9 or 8-8. And this year they're off to a 3-0 start. Ben Roethlisberger is 38 years old. He's got, let's see here. He's averaging 260 yards per game with 7 touchdowns and 1 interception in the first 3 games. And looks like the Big Ben of just a few years ago. So he's playing really well. Got the Steelers number 7. Patriots 6. Buccaneers. We're not in your 10. I've got them 5.
I considered them. I considered them and dismissed them for now.
Tom Brady is clicking. They've got weapons. They've got a great head coach. And I think they are, I
did consider them.
And think about how they look now, barring injury, is not nearly as good as what they'll look like in a month and 2 months from now. So the Buccaneers are 5. The Packers are 4, and we have the same top 3. Ravens 3, Seahawks 2, Chiefs are number 1. Declan Goff.
You know the gif that's going around of Cam Newton like sliding underneath there?
That's great.
That's how I feel about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers of how
it's like
them.
Family Guy when Joe starts crying about like his emotions and stuff, and all the guys just slide out of the booth.
And Peter goes back for his beer because that's exactly what I'd be doing as well. I'll speed through these quick. I'm going to keep the Tennessee Titans at 10. I know they're 3-0. They are a little bit of a fraudulent, but they're 3-0, and I look, you don't just get the 3-0 accidentally. They might slide down a little bit, but they're number 10 for me.
Sure.
Los Angeles Rams at number 9. Jared Goff and Sean McVay, I think, are back. And we were all sleeping on them. That is a knock on us. They're number 9. Tampa Bay Bucks come in at number 8. And yes, I was wrong. I already admitted that I almost slid off the chair here. Tampa Bay Bucks at 8. Tom Brady, okay. You're still good, and I apologize to you, sir.
Well, oh, you're making the declaration.
Wow,
yeah,
I didn't think. I thought this would take half a season.
All right, I want to use this as a teaching moment for Declan. Okay, I think you're wrong to admit that you're wrong right now.
Yeah, I agree.
I think you're wrong, but I think for you to move off your stance, it's too early. I think you should. I think you should stand firm on your take until later in the year, because you could easily right now say, "I know Tom Brady's off to a good start, but he's old. He's going to wind up having like a labrum problem in December." Like, you still have outs. Okay. You still have outs.
I'm like Rocco Baldelli. I'm aware of it now. You know, I'm aware of it now.
Phil is right. Here's the
Cling
thing
to
about
your
sports.
take as long as possible.
There is nothing worse that if you follow a hot take with premature wrongulation. Just wait, because if Brady like has a bad game now, are you going to have to go back and be like, well, no, I guess my hot take was right? I'm with Phil. Don't admit to anything yet.
When it becomes,
wait for your lawyer to show up.
When it becomes more obvious, then you're good.
My attorney. Number 7, New England Patriots. Cam Newton's awesome, man. Bill Belichick had us all fooled. They're number 7. Buffalo Bills at number 6. Yeah, they blew a big lead, but they're a fun team to watch. And we have to admit, Josh Allen is an MVP candidate. Steelers at number 5. That's another team I think we were all wrong about. Ben Roethlisberger still has a lot left in the tank. Mike Tomlin's still a very good coach. They're number 5. The Seahawks will be number 4 for me. I know Russell Wilson's balling out, but that defense is, I mean, look, Russell Wilson, I think, is right up there with Rodgers and Mahomes as the front runners for MVP, but without him, that team is not good. Like, let's be honest. If you remove Russell Wilson from that equation, that is not a good football team.
I think they have weapons.
It's been the case for a while, though,
Right.
really.
And look, the
I think they
quarterback's
keep
the most
being good
important
because they
position.
have 'em.
But here's the thing. I mean, we all know this, but like, it's the most important position. When you nail it, the rest of your team can be meh, and you can look like they do.
True.
And when you're going down the defensive path, it's like if Danielle Hunter's out and you lose a couple cornerbacks to age and free agency, you're screwed.
Yeah.
And that's how you start 0-3.
Exactly.
So bravo Seahawks overcoming a meh roster sometimes to still be awesome.
So Seattle number 4. Baltimore Ravens fall down a couple pegs to number 3 after their loss to the Chiefs. What is it? I think Lamar Jackson 21-1 in his career against everyone else. That's not the Chiefs, and 0-3. I think he's only lost like 1 or 2 starts, including postseason.
Well, he's actually 0-6 when trailing going into the second half in his career.
Okay, got it.
So that's a thing.
But he has been the Chiefs have his number, but I still believe that Baltimore Ravens are the second best team in that conference. Packers number 2. Aaron Rodgers is legit, man.
All over that Packer bandwagon. I love it.
And look, there are guys on the Packers I do like. I do think Alan Lazard is a pretty good wide receiver. We slept on him. I've made my feelings known about Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is, I think, one of the best backs in the league. And they're off to 3-0, man. Green Bay is the team to beat in the NFC. They're the best team in the NFC, hands down, right now. And obviously, number 1, Kansas City Chiefs. So that's my power rankings. 10-1, Titans, Rams, Bucks, Patriots, Bills, Steelers, Seahawks, Ravens, Packers, Chiefs.
Come on! Football!
Do you know what I appreciate quickly about Declan and where our sports son Phil is growing? It's this.
Still my sports fan?
We're like, forget about it.
Okay, sorry.
We need a
derailed.
sports paternity test.
Yeah.
But here's where I appreciate you. And your growth in this business is clear. You are still very much a diehard Minnesota sports fan.
You should have seen me with Phil watching the last 2 Twins games.
But
Declan has sports Tourette's.
But you like and have made it very clear that just from an outside view, I think you like Aaron Jones more than Dalvin Cook.
Yeah,
or at least as much. And I appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that you can look at 2 really good players and split the hair without going to the player that plays for the team that you like the most.
Yeah, I think
I appreciate that.
I think it's important. Like, I don't like Packer fans. Okay, let's be honest. Packer fans are annoying as hell, but I can like players on the Packers.
Yeah.
That's
Good for
totally
you,
fine.
though.
That's totally fine.
Yeah, Aaron Jones has 20 touchdowns since the beginning of last year on the ground alone.
Yeah, he's really good.
He's got 4 more in the air.
So he's used a lot.
Weird.
Shocking concept.
How does that
I know.
work? Can
Well,
someone explain it?
Hey, they did use Dalvin last week and see what happens. Yeah, the guy goes for
you
200
beat
yards
by a
total
point, but
offense.
that's fine. Yeah, that's exactly right.
All right, that's a wrap on this episode of Purple Daily. And by the way, we set a new Purple Daily download / if you combine our downloads on the podcast and YouTube, a new record last month. So thank you so much for everyone, whether you listen via podcast, Apple, Spotify, scorenorth.com, or whether you watch us on YouTube, youtube.com/Purple Daily Podcast. Thank you, and we'll be back with another episode tomorrow.
You think you like football? Brad Childress doesn't just like football. He loves football.
I did watch him. I was standing right behind him when he was warming up and saw him kind of reach for his groin and, hold it and whatever you do with the groin, rub it. That's what I think I witnessed. It twinged a little bit on him.
Football!